Could you guys introduce yourself briefly, I guess, for anyone in the future who will be watching this?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm LeeAnne Adams.
I'm Brian Adams. We are the creators and showrunners of
Dwight in Shining Armor.
Yeah, that's our show. It's on BYU TV. Season 1 just wrapped up. We are going to season 2 starts airing in September.
It does. And
I'm
Brian,
not sure if we're supposed to say that or not. I don't know if they've released the date.
I hope so.
Breaking news. Uh-oh.
I hope so. And Brian and I are married. We've been married for 19 years. A long time. We've been writing together for 13 or 14 years. So, and we have 2 kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're 16 and 14, 2 boys.
Yeah. So they're a great sounding board for us. They're right in the age that we hope many of our viewers are. Although we're hoping that kids and teens and their parents and their grandparents can all find something in the show to enjoy. That's really our goal.
Yeah, but we had kids, so we had a little built-in focus group. So that's the
point. So it sounds like you guys are married longer than you've been writing together.
Yeah.
Did you meet in the industry, or did you decide to work together after you were married, or how did that work?
We actually met in a crosswalk.
We met in a crosswalk.
That's no joke.
20 years ago, we met in a crosswalk, and you're right. We've been married longer than we've been writing together. We started writing together, like I said, about 13 years ago. But even before that, we did a lot. We would do a lot of development together. I have been writing plays since I was 11 or 12 years old. It's what I always wanted to do.
LeeAnne's one of those rare people who knew what she wanted to do when she was 12 years old, and she started doing it then. And she actually had a pretty good amount of success even as a teenager.
When she was some of my best work.
When she was 16 or something, she won an award a national award to the Sundance Institute for one of her stage plays, and she was always a sort of a stage writer for the stage. She also, for one of her plays, won an award through the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. and all this stuff. So when I met her, she was a playwright, and I was an accounting major. When we graduated, she had some success writing for the stage, and she said, I want to try writing for Hollywood. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about that, but I know you need an agent, so I'll try and help you out in that regard.
And so Brian, who's totally fearless, he just started hustling. He just starts calling up agencies, making cold calls. Richard Lovett. I was like, I've got someone for you, Richard. Obviously, it didn't go.
Richard Lovett didn't end up representing her yet.
But no, he helped to get my first manager, or my first agent. He was really my first manager. But right around that time, we started developing a feature together, and Brian was so much part of that, and I loved so much having a writing partner. I'd never had a writing partner before, that from that point on, I was like, I'm not going back. I love working with a partner, and Brian was the perfect partner.
Well, and even though I'd kind of, even though I was an accounting major, I'd always been a writer in my own right, and I was a songwriter and a musician. And actually, when I was in high school, my friends and I had a live public access television show that we used to do every Saturday morning. And I didn't even realize it at the time because I didn't know what these jobs were, but I was the writer, producer, and star of that show. So that's actually when I got my first foray into for writing for TV.
So he was born to be a creator and a producer for sure.
It's a weird life, Josh.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It took a little longer to get there. That's okay. So what gave you the inspiration to do Dwight specifically?
Yeah, well, a lot of our stories, and I think many stories, start with a what if question. What if blah were to happen? In this case, it was what if Sleeping Beauty was still out there and a modern guy happened to be the one to wake her up. That was where the idea started. And that felt like a really fun idea, but it also felt sort of like a feature, like a romantic comedy maybe about a modern guy and a girl from the past. And there was a moment when we realized this could be a lot more.
Well, when we realized it wasn't just the princess who was asleep and who was awakened, but it was her whole world. Obviously, the magician and the good guys and the bad guys that want to eat her brains and all the. When we realized everyone was asleep and everyone wakes up again after 1,000 years, and we realized wow, this is a fun idea to develop in a TV
Yeah,
series.
then it started to feel like a TV series, and then we also reimagined our princess. That she's a pretty stark variation on Sleeping Beauty. Yes, she's been sleeping a long time under a spell, and yes, she's a very beautiful girl. But she's not a dainty little princess. She's really tough, and she comes from a warrior culture, and so that also helped us to kind of see what the story was going to be. That she has an approach to life that is really horrifying to Dwight, who's just the nicest kid in the world, and she's kind of embarrassing him all the time. He has to do damage control for her all the time, and so that gave us a really different kind of a girl as our princess, and really was fun.
Well, that odd couple comedy gives us a lot of humor, and just the power and the strength and the kind of twist on what a sleeping princess would be. We've had a lot of fun. A lot of fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do like that dynamic a lot. Greta's great.
She's great. Yeah.
You touched on this a little, but it feels like from that base concept, there were a few different ways you could go. You could have been more serious. You could have done like a mystery procedural or different things. Did you always conceive of it as a half-hour comedy, or were there other things you explored?
That's a great question. The very first version of it was a feature. That was back when we were pretty much writing features, and that's the world we felt comfortable in, but it really did start to feel super limited. From there, we thought this could go anywhere. Just like you said, we thought, well, this could be an animated adventure action show. This could go dark and kind of mysterious and do super evil things come out of the woods, and do we go much more dark with it? Where we finally landed, we did many iterations of the first script for this, and where we finally landed on a 30-minute live action adventure comedy was the one where we felt we would have the most tread, because like Brian mentioned, we have this odd couple between Greta and Dwight, but we also have a double fish out of water story. She's a fish out of water in his world, he's a fish out of water in hers, and all these other characters that come from the woods are very out of place in Dwight's world. That started to feel really fun. So all of those indicators pointed us toward comedy. It felt like we were teed up to have a lot of comedic tread that we don't want to fight against. Having said that, a comedy only works when those highlights are balanced by lowlights. And so we tried to bring in as much as makes sense of the more serious themes and more serious tones when it makes sense and when it serves the story.
Right. And when we were introduced to BYU TV, we really found that they had the same vision. They were looking for what our vision of this show was, and we had adapted it already into a half-hour live-action adventure comedy, and that's really what they were looking for. Is something that, like LeeAnne said earlier, that the entire family could sit down and watch together, and that's when we realized it was like, a perfect match with them, and that's the direction we wanted to go, and that's what they were looking for. So it was a good connection there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, since you brought them up, I had never heard of BYU TV until I saw an ad for your show. So how did you find them?
Before we answer that, can I ask you where you saw the ad for the show?
I don't recall. I think it was on YouTube or Facebook, but it was the trailer popped up and it looked neat, so I clicked on it.
Yay!
We'll let the marketing department know that their hard work is paying off.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple of connections with BYU TV. First of all, LeeAnne and I are each graduates of the university. I did my undergrad there. LeeAnne did her master's degree there. And BYU TV is an interesting network. They are actually in about 60 million homes on basic cable.
And nobody knows it.
You probably, I mean, we have them on our cable system, and a lot of people do, but like LeeAnne said, no one knows it. And they, about the time that we met BYU TV, they had brought in a new head of the network and a new director of content, Mike Dunn and Andra Duke, and they basically said, we are in 60 million homes, but we don't have the content to really merit that. And so their new mandate was to develop content to sort of capitalize on the existing infrastructure that they already had, and ours was the first the first live action show that they did under that new mandate. So it was kind of perfect timing that we met them.
Right, and they're specifically trying to grow their scripted content. They have a lot of sports that they air, and also reality shows, game shows, things like that. But scripted they hadn't done too much of, and they wanted to grow that part of their business. And so it was a nice match and very timely, as is often the case. It really comes down to timing.
Right.
We had a script ready right at the moment when they really wanted something, and we had spent years developing that pilot, so that in that moment it really was ready and was able to go forward.
Right.
So this is a little bit of a dual question, but is working with BYU TV different than working with like other production houses you've worked with? And something I'm personally curious about, do you have to do anything like related to the college? Like, are there students working on this or anything like that?
Very interesting questions.
Those are good questions. First of all, the experience has been different working with BYU TV than other networks we've worked with in the past, in almost all positive
in really
ways.
Good ways.
They're very supportive of the filmmaker's vision, and the notes that we've gotten on our scripts and our cuts have been relatively few. I mean, obviously they have a lot of input, but compared to what we've gotten from others, it's relatively few. And more than anything, they've been really helpful. Andra Duke, who's the director of content there, really has the same vision that we do for the show. So her notes are almost always we agree with them, which is not the case.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, in most other experiences, there's a bunch of network executives, and they all want to do something weird to the story to make sure that their voice was heard. And by the end, we have our story just turning to sand and falling through our fingers, and it's just been a bad process with other networks. With this one, it's been great.
It's been wonderful.
Their notes have been smart and helpful, and like I said, relatively limited. So it's been a great experience. To answer your second part of your question, as far as like involvement of students, there is no mandate for that. The network headquarters are actually located on the campus of the university, and it's kind of weird to wrap your head around this. Like, I don't understand. There's a network and there's a university. How are they related? And I don't fully know the answer to that question. But there's no mandate from on our side to use students. I think I've heard that at the network itself, because they're on the campus of a university, they do have some interns from the college. But we would be happy to have interns here. But we're actually in Atlanta, Georgia right now, a long way from the campus. So that's not been part of it. And I think this was part of your question also regarding content, if it has to be related to the university or related to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is also affiliated with the university. And the answer to that is a definitive no. In fact, they specifically don't want anything in our show to relate to any religion, except we do Norse Celtic pagan religion does factor into our story a little bit, but they specifically don't want anything to do with with religion. It's not a religious show. It's not. There's no sort of proselytizing agenda here. They just want to create very high quality content that families can enjoy together, which is a
dream come true.
A mandate we can 100% behind.
Excellent. Are there any specific shows, movies, books, things that inspire Dwight or inspire you when you're working on Dwight?
Yeah, I think we can't get away from Lord of the Rings as a huge inspiration for the world. That's just sort of in so much of what we do in creating Greta's world. But we always try to take what Tolkien did and then put our own spin on it, make it Dwightish. So there's Lord of the Rings, of course. Harry Potter in its way, like we want the Harry Potter fans. We want them bad. So and there's enough in our world that ought to, we hope, appeal to Harry Potter fans that there's some similarities there, but again, we're trying to put our own spin on everything. And even in Harry Potter, that's what she's doing so well, is putting her own spin on these ancient old myths and characters. So we're trying to do the same, but in a way that feels comfortable and familiar. Like we sort of get Greta's world immediately because we know Tolkien and because we know Harry Potter.
Right. And also, The Princess Bride has
huge.
been a big inspiration for each one of us individually and collectively, and also for the head of the network, Andra. That was a big inspiration for her. I think anyone who's about our age, that was such a seminal
Huge
book
movie for us.
and movie, and so we've definitely drawn inspiration from that, and that's really. In a dream world, Dwight would have the same appeal, like
Tone.
broad appeal and tone
Yeah.
that Princess Bride did. So that's always a big inspiration for us as well.
A touchstone for us.
For sure.
Well, I think in a lot of ways it does. And I did want to ask you, because I do write, and I find this interesting. I feel like your show does a good job of creating wholesome comedy without being too like cheesy or childish or whatever. And I was wondering if you found that a difficult balance to maintain, or how hard it is to write that sort of way.
Yeah, it is a balance, and probably a little bit more challenging than filling a script with adult humor that will get a shocked laugh, and we don't do any of that. We instead have to really build situational humor. So the humor is coming from the craziness of the situation that these characters are in. And then as we get to know the characters better, we can pull more and more humor out of their reactions to those situations. So much of it has come from getting to know the characters better. And also, like we were talking about before, we have the storytelling gift of many fish out of water. All of our characters are fish out of water. So we milk that a lot. And then the misunderstandings between the two cultures, we can milk that a lot. We have so many places we can draw for humor that don't go to adult or vulgar or obscene or anything like that. We don't need to, because we have a lot of things set up in our structure that keep producing funny situations for us.
Right. Well, and thank you for noticing that, because it is a challenge. It's sort of an added level of difficulty, but we have a lot of fun with it. Another place that we really mine for humor, and I guess another inspiration, is P.G. Wodehouse. His novels, the absolute just genius he has with language.
Yeah.
I'm not even necessarily trying to compare ourselves, but we try and have some of that fun, sort of wordplay, humor that I don't know. That's always what we're shooting for. The P.G. Wodehouse, kind of humor that comes from language.
There's I don't know if you've read Wodehouse, but there's just this wonderful, delicious musicality to the words and how he puts them together. And we are, we're not on his level, but we try to make the dialogue fun for the actors to say and fun to listen to, and to give it a kind of a musicality, and we're enjoying the words.
Right.
So there's some humor that comes from that as well, like Brian said, some wordplay, lots of misunderstandings, people misunstanding each other all the time.
And also we've had a lot of fun with medieval insults. There's all these kind of medieval bad words that we found on the internet. There's sites dedicated to like medieval insults, and they're just so fantastic. Like cumbergrounds and poop naughty.
Poop naughty.
And it's also funny as we shoot the scripts, we hear different crew members as we walk around the set. They'll say, out of the way, poop naughties, and the crew members kind of get in on that fun as well. And we hope that some of the fans have also kind of picked up. It's just delightful.
It is fun. We also have some runners now that are playing through, like in I think every episode at some point Dwight says ew.
Right.
And so now that's become a thing.
We're waiting for someone to do a supercut of all
Dwight's
ew.
There's a lot of that, so that's fun. Dwight's reactions give us a lot of humor, and there's other runners, like almost every episode someone from the woods will say, "What's amiss? What's amiss? What's amiss?" So we are to a point now where so many of the scenes we kind of know what the characters are going to say because we know them so well, and we know how to get that ooh out of Dwight.
Right.
So it's getting easier as we go, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we've sort of internalized the characters, and also our actors have just done such a great job sort of developing those characters along with us, and our cast is really our greatest gift.
That's the truth.
Yeah, they are fantastic.
Right.
I have a quote from an interview you did with Sci-Fi Pulse. I think that's the name of the site. Many of the characters we thought would be one-offs in one episode, we ended up loving so much that they became recurring characters in our story.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, as a follow-up, if you could give specific examples of that.
Like all of them, every guest star. We're like, let's bring that person back. We've had such a great luck with our guest stars, but there are plenty.
Well, the first notable example is Clodwig, who shows up in the pilot. And we expected that Clodwig, we wrote the pilot, and then we thought, well, and Clodwig will just sort of disappears into the town. Maybe we'd see him again doing something funny, but we certainly didn't expect that Clodwig would become the major character that he's become in the story. Also, Jacopo.
Well, yeah, Jacopo was another one that he was the villain in Flip, episode 2. And there were two things that happened. First of all, Josh Breslow, who plays Jacopo, did such a great job with that character. I mean, just absolutely brought him.
This tiny, wrinkly woman.
It was gold, and we were sitting there on the set just in stitches. And we're like, how do we not bring this guy back? And then the second thing is he's just an incredible guy. He's an incredibly nice guy. We just
love having him around. We want to hang out with him.
Right, and so he actually, I don't know if you've heard the podcast that Josh started.
I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet.
So Josh started this podcast called Dwight and Shining Armor: The Sunken Kingdom, which is available, on all podcast platforms. And so he's done that. We've gotten to know Josh even more through that process, and he just. We had to bring him back, and so in upcoming seasons, there's a lot more Jacopo coming.
Yeah, but there's more Jacopo coming.
There's and really a lot of our guest stars, they're just. It's kind of become a joke. First of all, we bring in bad guys, and by the end of the episode, they're
love them
they're
so much.
Good
they're
guys.
good guys.
and then we were so happy with them, then we find a way to bring them back, and we have to kind of limit ourselves. In fact, we're working on an episode now where it's like it's a climactic episode, and it's like we have 9 guest stars, and our production gets a little bit frustrated with how many speaking parts we have.
Some of it is deliberate, that we think we're trying to build out our world. We're trying to create a sense that these people come and they stay and they enrich and become part of the Woodside world. So in some cases it's deliberate, but in other cases the character is just so fun once we see him or her on screen that we think, oh wow, like we start to write stories in our minds of where this character can go.
We fall in love with our characters, is the truth.
We do. I'll tell you the character that has had the most questions about it in terms of, is this character coming back, is the koi fish in the moat. Everybody wants to know, what happened to the koi? Are they ever going to turn into killer koi?
They were at one point going to turn into killer koi, and our visual effects budget got cut, so they became regular koi. But if we pick up some more money, maybe they'll finally. They were going to crawl out of the moat with these fangs.
If you ever see killer koi, you'll know it's because we got some more money.
Won.
Nice.
I'm going to tell the crew we're going to go without lunch this week, guys. Bring your own lunch so we can killer koi.
I guess sort of on that note, are there going to be these set of questions are more like season 2 or moving forward questions. Are there going to be new magical creatures that the team encounters as they go forward? Because there have been several.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Our world can go anywhere. That's the joy of it for us. Anything can be out there in the woods. So you'll see in season 2 this fall, and then in seasons 3 and 4 next year, you're going to see all kinds of creatures and everybody coming.
That really is the fun and kind of, if I can say it, the gift we've given ourselves is that the woods are undefined. The expanse of the woods are undefined. What was in, who and what were in the woods when Baldric cast a champion spell to put everyone asleep. So all these things can just keep crawling out of the woods. And so creatures, magical creatures and other, magical beings are a big part of our world and will continue to happen.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Awesome. You talked about this a little in the thing before, but we did get teased in the pilot of a little bit of this like bro club with Dwight and Clodwig.
Guy club.
Do like guy club adventures at any point? Is that something that's gonna happen?
Guy club is coming.
We actually had an episode called Guy Club that we were working on for a while. It ended up morphing into lessons 1 through 4. But we have big plans for Guy Club. So yeah, that'll be coming back for sure.
All right, sweet. are we going to see more of Dwight's social life and the friends he has outside of Greta and like in Woodside, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that's a part of the world that we want to build out more. And so in this fall, we're going to see more episodes that take place in the school environment that throw Greta into I won't spoil it, but throw her into some high school situations that are familiar to our audience, but very unfamiliar to her.
It's a balancing act because, like we always say, our stories about worlds colliding, the world from the woods and the world from Woodside. So we want to have the right balance. We don't want it to become like a Saved by the Bell high school show
Right.
where we're always in the school, and we want to spend enough time out in the woods exploring the the crazy characters. But there is a lot of fun to have with the relatable everyday life situations when our woods creatures and casts coming into that world. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, and we have some characters that we'll introduce shortly, and then that are coming up that will stick more in our storytelling that belong to Dwight's world. So yeah, the answer is yes. We're going to be dealing with more of that than we did in season 1, and trying to build out that world still further.
All right, awesome. That was actually my next question: is would we see Greta in school? So we have seen, I think, and in this season, a lot of Dwight solving Greta's problems or defeating her monsters through modern means or diplomatic means. Are we going to see instances where Greta solves his problems through her warrior skills or princessness or things like that?
Yes.
Absolutely. And we certainly, again, it's a balancing act. We want to give Dwight opportunities to use his modern superpowers of diplomacy and
nice guyness.
Yeah. I feel like that's really, like I said, we have kids and we feel like that is sort of the superpower of Gen Z, that they just focus on developing those wonderful interpersonal skills much more than
we did.
Than I did, at least as a kid. So we want to give Dwight the opportunity to shine, but we also don't want to put Greta in a situation where she's damseling or that she doesn't have, because she's a warrior princess, and so we absolutely have some of the opportunities for her to use those and reciprocate in saving Dwight.
Yeah, sure. Greta will be helping and saving Dwight a lot.
Yeah, the champion spell does bind them together, so they each have to look after the other.
The last thing I wanted to touch on, because since I mentioned this in the review, there is a disconnect between the end of episode 1 and the start of 2, and I hear there was like some story behind that. So can you talk about it?
Yeah, we can tell you a little bit about it. So from the pilot to episode 2, that's the question?
Yeah.
So in the pilot, we shot the pilot in Georgia, in Augusta, Georgia. And then we shot the rest of the episodes of season 1 in Salt Lake City, Utah. So we rebuilt everything and kind of started over. And so you do see kind of a difference in the landscape. Like we go from, in the pilot, we're in the Georgia woods, and then in the next episode, we're in the Utah mountains. I don't want to call anyone's attention to this if they didn't catch it.
We tried to minimize the mountains.
But you definitely see a difference in the look for sure. And that's why it just came down to it made more sense for the network for us to be closer to them as they started off on the show, so they could kind of participate more in it. And so, we ended up moving the whole show after the pilot.
And we had the really fortunate opportunity to reshoot a big portion of our pilot, which most people don't. Pilots are always tough because you don't know if you're going to get picked up. You're working on a tight budget and a tight schedule, which we definitely were. But once we had shot the first 20 episodes, we had the opportunity to go back and reshoot key scenes from the pilot,
which definitely helped.
Right.
In the transition.
And there were some things that we wanted to change, and we got the opportunity to do that. So that was a exciting opportunity for us. I think we may have lost
you again.
Oh no!
I can still hear you guys.
All right, okay. We can hear you. You're frozen in time though, but
but we can hear your voice.
see us.
Okay, yeah, I can see you. So I think it's okay.
Cool.
Okay, yeah. I guess in closing, do you have anything you want to say to your fans or people who haven't seen the show yet? Something like that.
Oh, to our fans, thank you. We love you. We are thinking of you every day and every page, trying to make a great show for you. And for anyone who hasn't seen the show, get in there and give it a shot. Watch 2 or 3 episodes so you can really start to see the characters gel.
Well, and that is the fun thing with this network. Obviously, they broadcast, on the channel, but then all 10 episodes of season 1 are available to stream online for free. So anyone who hasn't seen the show yet can binge watch them right now. If you just Google Dwight in Shining Armor, the first link that comes up has all 10 episodes on it for free. So that's a rare opportunity as well.
All right, it's sweet. Well, thank you for talking to me and answering my questions, and I'm really looking forward to season 2.
Josh, thank you very much
you.
for taking the time. We look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
Have a great day.